Hello and welcome to the AnsweRED podcast. My name is Paweł Burza and I'm joined by Sebastian Kalemba.
Hello everyone, and today we're going to host Karla Ortiz, a freelance concept artist, and Even Amundsen, also a freelance concept artist and illustrator.
They both worked on almost everything from Lord of the Rings to Marvel to Star Wars, you name it. So I can't wait for you to check this out, so let's jump into the episode. All right, Karla, Evan, welcome to the podcast. It's awesome to have you. We want to start very basics. We've been already talking and laughing throughout before we started recording. But please introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into the art meaty part of it, the whole conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's arrange by hierarchy. Best first?
No, the tallest first.
Oh, flipped it around on me.
So tall.
I'm Evan. I'm from Norway. I draw stuff. And have very combative opinions about minor things that don't really matter. How about you, Ms. Ortiz?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Evans. Hi, I'm Karla Ortiz. I'm a fine artist, illustrator, and concept artist. I've worked in the industry for, I think, over 15 years now. I have no idea. I don't have an idea what time is anymore. Yeah, it's all kind of blurred together. But most of my career has been in film. I worked in Marvel Studios for about 8 years. Worked on Loki season 1, 2, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Most notably known for my work on Doctor Strange. I designed good old BB Strange's costume.
Yep.
But I've also worked on Jurassic World, Rogue One, a bunch of other stuff. In terms of games, I've worked on all sorts of stuff. Been working with ArenaNet recently, Blizzard, and just Final
Talk
Fantasy
about a
16.
palmarès. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Everything's there.
But my favorite thing to do is honestly just draw, paint my own stuff, and then play a ton of video games afterwards.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah.
There you go.
And
That's much longer. I'm sorry. I should have kept it so sweet.
No,
you were
Evan, is there anything you want to add? You need to better that, man.
I draw other things. No, I've also worked on things.
You are incredible.
I'm all right, but let's be honest. One of us paints properly. But also, I do not have your client list. I wish I did. But
I'll call you.
Please
Let's
do.
refer you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Let's get you working.
But yeah, I've worked on some video games like Assassin's Creed.
Just Assassin's Creed.
Some stuff like that, and on some Magic the Gathering things.
Oh, of course.
And,
we are huge fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
I love Teshar. I forgot my card, which I feel bad about. Yeah.
And I haven't gotten to show anybody yet, but I think on the 14th the NDA goes out, so then I get to show the stuff I got to do for Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
So I got to do stuff in the next edition.
Because I got to work on that for a little bit too.
Yeah, the next edition. Yeah, shit, that's so cool. We're not allowed to say what they're going for, but I think most people will be like, yes, finally. so yeah, it's a fun job. Yeah.
So we technically work together.
Yeah.
Colleagues, cohorts.
With D&D and
Finally, right?
Magic the Gathering.
Heck
Look at
yeah,
us.
and Blizzard.
We're co-workers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Now it's official.
It's official.
Yeah. Everybody knows.
But guys, both of you are freelancers, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. But have you ever worked for the company for some longer of time? What do you prefer?
Have you done that?
I've done a couple. I worked for Volta, which is an outsourcing studio in Quebec for 3 years. And that was great. I got to work with some people that are goddamn legends, but also you get to see some of the people who are fantastic, but also do not really sort of go in for the bigger. So one of my favorite artists ever is Arnaud Feu. He was one of my lead artists at Volta, and he's not a super big name, but if he was interested in doing stuff, he could. He's amazing. And on the other side of that, I got to work with Anna Fair and Ruan Gia and stuff there, and they are quite substantial names. Yeah. And on the other hand, I got to go and work for Blizzard for in California, and then
For what IP?
Hearthstone, and I worked at Cinematics, so I worked on the Cinematics for Hearthstone and a little bit on World of Warcraft. And then I lasted for about 6 months, and then the realization that this might not be for me, both contextually and professionally. So I told my studio lead that I might need to leave, and he was like, I could tell. So 6 months, and then I ran away back to the anti-California that is Denmark.
Also, Riot Games Workshop, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's also
indeed.
there. Yeah. Incredible stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, your art is awesome. I love how you portray like goblins, like all these like vile creatures. They feel so like, you know, visceral, like alive almost. Oh, it's
Meaty,
so
right?
good.
Very
Yes,
fleshy.
yeah. Like you see that there's a thought process behind them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I love a good goblin. You know,
Yeah.
there's something lovely about a thing that, as we mentioned before, like its intent, its core function is just to be kind of awful.
Yes.
And if you
Yes.
start there, then like, ooh, so when they feel good, they're doing bad. Like that's a fun thing.
Yeah.
I think like Adrian Smith, the Warhammer artist, had a really good quote about goblins. That like goblins are they have lots of elements to them, but they are not evil.
Yeah.
Because they're not smart enough to be
Yes,
evil.
yes.
So they're just like they're chaotic 9-year-olds with like violence at their fingertips.
Yes.
Which is like, yeah, that's a good.
Amazing. So to answer your question too, so I worked at, I did a little bit of like in-house work at NCSoft way back when what's the game? City of Heroes was out. So that was very, like, it was in its last dying leg, and I'm like, hi. But then I left. I went to work at a, mobile game company called Kabam, which is ridiculous. Like, nobody knows about it. But I got to work with, like, some amazing people there. It was surprising. I got to work with Alan Williams, who's an incredible artist. I got to work with Brian Mattias, who's the designer of, like, The Mandalorian now.
Yeah.
Like, Mitch Morehouser, who's just incredible. So it was, like, a lot of really good people.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Industrial Light and Magic, where I was there for about 1.5 years, and I got to work on the World of Warcraft movie, Lucy, Jurassic World, and all that. And to me, there's like pros and cons to being in-house. I love being around a team, and I love seeing what people were up to. Because you get like really excited. You get to like be like, oh, I get excited too about painting. let me work super extra hard here. But I'm easily distracted. So the moment someone would walk around and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, chatty mode engaged. And it would take me forever to get back into painting. So I would realize that I would just do much better, but in my own. And so when I moved over to Marvel, they gave me a call. They're like, Karla, do you want to come live in LA? I'm like, no. And but they were like, but wait, hold on. If I could get to work from remotely, can I? They're like, yeah, you can. I'm like, yes. And that started kind of just work from home for about 8 to 10 years now.
Okay, so like way before pandemic.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I was very well prepared
So we
for it.
were,
I was like, well,
exactly.
everybody else was like, oh God. And I'm like, it's just like
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah. How is it actually for you, like looking into your love for fine art versus like, superhero stuff? Do you feel like we're bridging the gap there, or is like it feels like, for me it feels like two separate things almost? Like what's your take on it?
So I mean, for me, the role of a concept artist, whether it's superheroes, whether it's like fantasy, sci-fi, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm there to provide visual solutions to a client. It's a straightforward job. I can get excited about the ideas, but I don't get married. So if like the director or says like, let's go somewhere else, or we chose something else from the team, I won't be upset about it.
Yeah.
With fine art, it's me kind of, being true to my vision. So I don't have an art director. I don't have any director wanting anything. It's just for me.
Yeah.
And that's where I get to like really explore. That's where I get to be really, really creative. That's where I get to take something to the level of finish that I want.
Yeah.
And so that incidentally also, that's also where I learned the most. And the job you learn a lot as well, because you're tackling everything all at once. But yeah, they're kind of different, but the attention and love to detail and to drawing and to the craftsmanship is the same.
Yeah.
I love that you are like an artist's artist, which is which is proper. Like,
God, I wish I had a mustache.
no, twirly. Probably get you one. Probably some costume stores around town.
Next time I'll have the biggest one.
No, because like for me, drawing is more like a means to an end. Like I do concept art first, so like I'm into it for the ideas. Like, and then and so like, which is part of the reason why I tend to be terrible with like some projects, because I'm like, no, these are just vibes. We need rationale. Where's your world building? You know. So like, that can be like that part of the reason maybe me and Blizzard wasn't meant to be. You know. But like, I have a project now, for example, with the Polish company called Artifex Mundi, which is like fantastic for that, because they essentially just want world building, and they want rationale, they want that kind of stuff. And this is really sort of fascinating. But so like, when I work on my own stuff, for example, it is just world building. Like it's mostly that, and then like everything else is sort of directed out of that. And that's part of the reason why I really love looking at your stuff, because it's like it is an aestheticist. That it's someone whose first love is the expression, and then everything else comes in to support that. And I'm like, part of me wishes I could do that, but also it's lovely to see someone who knows themselves.
It's like grass is greener on the other
side. Yeah, it's probably right.
Because like for me, like I love, you know, especially when it comes to like, you know, a good draftsman, like who's just like incredible ideas right off the bat, can nail them so good. And you see it, you're just like, this is a pure story right here in the form of a drawing. Versus for me, it's like my story will come in time. You know, because first I have like, here's the aesthetic, but the aesthetic, in order to get the aesthetic, you still have to tell a little bit of a story, because otherwise you're just throwing shit together that doesn't necessarily fit. But it's something that it takes a very long time to get to that point, versus like I could see someone who's like, I'm great at sketching, and it's like 20 different drawings, while I'm just like, I have like, here's a painting that I did, it's very well finished, but it took me forever.
But I think you say something very true there, though. Like even both in your personal and professional work, like there's always that sense of you're giving us this one thing, but there's clearly like stuff behind it. So if you were to ask, you would have a story for it. And like there's an element of trust there between audience and artist that I feel is like you feel safe when you're looking at an Ortiz, you know?
Oh, thank you. I think also I'm very selfish and also very childish, because like I get so stupid excited when I paint a face and it looks like a face. I'm like, wow!
I have that with noses.
Yeah.
If I can nail a nose, like especially from like a weird angle, I'm like,
nailed it.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Still got it.
Okay. I know, but I'm just like, I'm like a child. I'm just like painting this. I'm like, that looks like a face. Holy crap! You know, like, and then I paint a hand. I'm like, it fits the face. Oh, and it's just like it never goes away. That excitement.
Get excited. That's
I know.
Awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's just, so it's I'm very selfish in that aspect.
I think that yeah, sure, but that's also just being an artist, isn't it? Like that's part of the reason you do it, because you get that joy out of it.
Yeah, it's true.
But now I can tell you have a nose fetish, man. I look at your goblins, always those noses, like crazy.
Yeah.
Every artist has a part where they're just like, I'm into it.
Definitely. Yeah. Like I love an articulating mouth, for example.
Oh yeah.
Just like if you can nail the angles of like, you know, the upper arch and the lower arch so that it feels like a three-dimensional thing on the top of like a face, and it's just like I can place teeth in here, I can put a tongue. It's gonna be great. It feels proper. Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Incredible.
There's definitely one subject that comes back all the time on events, and I want to ask this question. Freelancers, there are people that are looking for advices, how to manage in this world, being a freelancer, how to deal with clients, what they should actually think about while, I don't know, even signing a contract or whatever. Do you have any tricks, tips for people who are gonna listen to us and they are freelancing? Anything?
Yeah.
I think like the first thing, the boringest thing, is like either learn to read a contract or get a lawyer.
Yes.
That shit sucks, but like. Like both my parents are engineers, so like I'm relatively good at reading legalese. I fucking hate it, but I can do it. So I don't. But if you can't, or if you don't want to, like get a lawyer. Make sure you have that, because I know one too many people who's been f***ed over by like some tiny print at the last page in the contract, and then like they're out, you know, like half of their pay or something. So yeah, start there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, what changed my kind of game is actually having a bullet journal, or like it's kind of like basically like an agenda that you kind of write things out in, because having and it's. And, you know, and it, for me, particularly my brain, I need to write it. I can't just have it on like a digital screen. I'll forget about it. But having that level of organization is really important, because if not, like you'll be like, today is email day, and before you know it, you answered all the emails and you have no time to paint.
Yeah.
Today is like paint day. Oh, but I have to do all these other errands. I have to do all this other stuff. And then with freelance, because you're a master of your own time, there's really no good separation between like your life and your work hours. And so suddenly you're working over the weekends and you're working crazy hours and everything can mount up. So having a clear schedule for yourself where you're like, oh, I'm scheduling time for my weekends. I'm scheduling time for the things that I love too. So it's not just work, it's the things that I love. Like, ooh, I want to write part of my script, or ooh, I want to work on this particular project that I'm working on. I think that to me really helped me quite a lot.
I think that's excellent advice.
I think between us two, like you'll have a competent freelancer.
I mean, reading contracts is super important, but
God.
we forget about the fine print always,
sucks
and there's
so
always
bad.
something there. There's always something there.
But also schedule, man. It's so easy to lost yourself
Of course.
and stuff, overburdened with the tasks, and forget about everything
I think
else.
also comes with some of our personalities. Like me, it's very hard for me to focus on one thing, and when I see something shiny and cool, I will always go to that. And it's kind of like you're always jumping in between things, and instead of you should be focusing on getting things done. But I get like bullet journal is important because you need to sometimes write down the things to even remember them, so you don't forget them. Because once you write it, you that's how I used to like learn in school, right?
That was me too.
Yeah.
Like I used to be like, oh, I'm gonna go do this thing, or oh, I gotta go do that thing. For me, though, in particular, that's a specific name for that. It's ADHD.
Yes.
So,
Hello.
Yes,
Same here,
yes,
right?
same.
That's what I like.
Am I the only goddamn normal person here?
Yes.
Define normal.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I have no deficiencies.
just doubt. Press
my-
X for
I mean,
doubt.
in
That's
this,
the
in
worst
this, like,
just when you start doubting your own processes.
yeah.
And you're like, do I know what the fuck I'm doing? Like as a freelancer, like if you're sort of especially if you're starting a new job, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you've been in a flow, you've been in a kind of like in a cooperative sort of position with your previous client, or just however you usually work, and you jump into something and you just meet a wall, and you're like, did I never know anything?
Yeah.
I think the thing that creeps me out sometimes, you look back at some past work and you're like, how the hell did I do that? Where it's just like, oh, wait, let me just, and I'm like, I totally forgot how to do that. And then you start sweating. You're like, because the client will be like, I want this, and it's that old stuff, and they're like, how do I do that?
It's hard
You
also
figure it out.
because sometimes a client wants something very, very specific, and you kind of you look at your previous work and you're like, that was like years ago. This was like, I want to like up my game. I want to do something new, something different, exciting for me. It's like it has to be hard to keep that balance, actually, right? Or not?
I think that carries into a thing too, which is not to like avoid. I think good question, but I think being able to have a back and forth with a client to kind of force them a bit without being confrontational,
Push it
I
a
think is
little
like
bit.
super important, because if you come into a situation like that where they're sort of just referencing stuff that you feel like that's passé or that's not as complex as I should be working, then being able to tell them in a way that they're not getting defensive, but being like, I see what you mean, I understand what you need here.
Yeah.
But can I present another vision of what that might be?
So negotiating a little bit, trying to push it towards what you want to achieve. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like good advice for everybody, but like I always do briefs over calls, because if they want to put something down, I want to be make sure that I understand it contextually, and I want to make sure that like if they've presented me the larger vision of whatever the project is, and then they're presenting something that's clearly going to crash with that, I want to know whether or not my conception is wrong, or if they just don't care that much about the rules they've been putting down, and whether or not we need to like
There's
make some
room in there.
adjustments.
That's great advice.
That's really good.
For me, it's one of those things, like sometimes, you'll always try to kind of advocate for the best solution.
Yeah.
And that solution is someone that is, something that like excites you to do, but also would be really cool for, the project at hand. So exactly what Evan said, trying to find a way to kind of negotiate that. But I think sometimes you'll find places where like the client's like, no, this is cool. And you're like, all right, no problem. And I think, you'll end up in a spot where like sometimes you'll paint things that you don't necessarily care for. Like, for example, in my career, it's been like a door, like, or a crate, and that's it happens every once in a while. But I think it's one of the things, like, for me, I've kept it exciting when I'm like, all right, I'm gonna paint a door, but it's gonna be the best door I've ever made. Like, how can I make this door look so damn cool? And like, thinking about it in really interesting, cool ways, like how can you make it exciting for you? That can be helpful. But then the other one too is like, give what the client wants to see, but then add a extra fun one for you.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes that'll actually, get the point across better. And then the client will be like, oh, this looks good. Or maybe just like, no, good effort. I'll still, and you're like, at least that you got it out of your system.
Yeah, and you tried.
Yeah, you tried.
Yeah.
But to really answer your question, though, that's when I would suggest, like, I think for our longevity as freelancers, especially as creative professionals, it's really important to make some sort of time for you. You know, because I think like a lot of people, the problem that they have is that they only give their creative outlet to their job. And that's a quick recipe to a lot of burnout. Alan William was actually the one who told me this very early in my career. He's always like, please find time to do your work or things that are exciting for you. And it doesn't need to be like super big personal paintings. It can be like, I went to a cafe and I drew people, you know, or like something that's for you. That will help quite a lot. Sometimes it's saying screw that creative endeavor and doing something else completely.
Sometimes just do nothing.
That
just
too.
Learn to sit still with yourself.
Impossible for me, but yes.
But I mean, it can be the best thing. It sort of carries into like in Scandinavia, in Norway, we have this sort of idea that a best friend is a friend you can sit alone in silence with, and there is no problem. And like I like that with being a friend to myself as well. Like sometimes I just need to not anything. So like I'll go to a park, I'll find a bench and like turn off all the music and just sit for like half an hour.
But they throw you monies? Like
In a hat.
Damn.
You know why the hat is here though.
I was like, but in all seriousness, like,
That's why you're like, you look good.
Clearly the philosophizing is working. They're paying me already.
It's almost like, look at that poor philosopher painter.
Feed him.
He's an artist, you can tell.
He's starving and you're just like over here thinking about like nothing.
Just like really trying to just zone it all out and just like 10 deep breaths. Just like find that place where like there are no voices talking.
kind of a way, right? Inhaling. Yeah, exactly. Are you very picky with your clients right now? Like for sure there are some best projects you've worked for so far, right? And you love Goblins, Games Workshop. I can imagine Games Workshop approaching you and saying, hey, Evan, we want to rebrand all the orcs and goblins. Can you help us?
And I'd love that. I mean, that's I would love to do that. I have worked with Games Workshop before, so I probably make some stipulations about what the working relationship would be like. But yeah, I think about like, being picky with the client. I try not to be, but then again, you do get a lot of weird emails, so you know, it's a lot of that. But yeah, no, as long as I mean, you know, you on one hand you want to sort of choose the things that like appeal to your heart, and on the other hand you want to be an ice cold professional. So it is a bit about like finding the balance there and seeing like, is there potential here for interest? Can I learn something from this? Is there like how big is the scope? You know, if it's a short gig, I'm okay like jumping on pretty much anything, and then like if it's longer, then I'll get more picky and make sure that like this is something I'm willing to spend a couple of months on.
Yeah,
I think for me it's just been always like an eras thing, like. When I first started out, I couldn't be picky. It was like, whatever, I don't care, let's go. You know, and you end up working on some really weird shit that way. But hey, paycheck's a paycheck. But as you become, you know, your work becomes known, as your clientele list grows, suddenly, like, you know, you have to kind of value your time. And if a client comes in saying, hey, here's this massive project, and you're not very excited for it, the pay's okay, and then it's just like one of those things where it's like, do I take this client or say, you know, pass, you give it on to someone else, because you always want to try if you can elevate someone else while you're at it. Because something else might come, or something, you know, might already be on the way, or maybe you have the bandwidth to make, you know, to give yourself time to work on your own stuff. And if you're at that position, then it becomes more of like a, yes, you know, you do become just a little bit pickier because there's so much that could come your way, that is coming your way, that could be really exciting. And I don't want to be in a position, and this has happened to me before, where I'm like, I guess I should take it. And then it came like an amazing project, and I'm like, I literally cannot, because like I'm working on this dumb project. So like, and the 20 clients listening, all your projects were fantastic. There is no dumb project.
It was all golden.
They were all amazing. No, but I think so, but it comes in stages. You know, I don't think you can come, you know,
You mentioned something really interesting, really good there, though, like having the mindset of like the early days of freelancing, because there is that point of like, I went freelancing after 3 years in the studio, and it felt, and I only did it because I was moving to Prague. I knew people there. I had enough contacts to kind of be relatively sure that I could get enough to like cover rent.
Yeah.
So like, if you want to go freelance, like make sure you have the capacity, have the network to like at least cover the basics, because nothing is quite as painful as sort of getting to like a desperation point, especially because then your way back is either to take on like increasingly bad projects or maybe take a studio job you don't like or whatever. So like, you know, build it slowly, make sure you have like a little bit of a jumping off point, and then like, you know, start swimming.
You were smart.
Yeah.
I was not. I was the exact scenario. I was just like, oh no. I have no jumping point.
I got really lucky though. Because like my producer and my former art lead had both quit Volta and moved to Prague. And they were both like, hey, Prague's pretty nice, actually. You want to sit around and draw fantasy stuff all day? You can move over here. And I was like, all right, cool. And Prague is like cheap as dirt, so it was great.
Oh, how fancy of you.
Had everything planned. What excites you though, as artists? Like, what do you draw like inspiration from? Like, what gets you like fired up?
It depends.
You
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. Like for a client job.
For anything. For anything. Like when you would have to say, okay, this charges my battery, and I get super creative, I get super excited just to sit down and draw.
Man, I have to say, for me, everything.
Everything?
It's so dumb, but it is everything, because there's so much cool shit. Like, I keep on thinking, I'm like, oh, like, let's do something, like, boring ass mundane. Like, you know, like, what's a boring? Give me something boring.
I don't know, an eraser?
You give me okay. I think about like an eraser, right? But then there's like so many different kinds of eraser. For example, if you go to Japan, you go to like the craft stores, like you have these like incredible sized erasers with all these kind of different shapes. You have the mechanical erasers that like have like this different points. And with an eraser, I can cut like with an X-Acto knife and then have like a perfectly pinpoint like little thing that I can go ahead and lift like a little bit of a highlight into a small little eye, you know, and it's just like, oh, beautiful. And I get to paint that? Cool. I'm going to do a whole sheet of like the different, like the old school standard, you know, black and white eraser going in all crazy ways. Like I will draw you an eraser that has a little note in it that has like all the cheating information for the test of the student that's going to use it, because I used to do that, you know? So like there's always something really cool about anything, even something mundane. And so like, and then every time that I'm like, I don't know if this is cool enough, I just am like, all right, let me go research it. And eventually I'll find something that I'm like, oh shit, that's so awesome. So
yeah, what about all the Marvel stuff? Because I feel like it is kind of defined by all the comic books and things like that. But what comics kind of have is they have multiple art styles, and they kind of appeal to different people. And sometimes they're like, you can see the same character portrayed in a different way, but they all have like these important things that kind of define them. And you worked on Doctor Strange. I mean, Sorcerer Supreme, he's kind of like a well-established character. But how do you put your mark in those things? Like, how do you also like take inspiration from like your own stuff and then kind of put it onto that character, which is kind of defined?
So I think for projects like that, like I kind of take myself out of the equation, to be honest with you, because with like Marvel properties in particular, like there's a solid fan base, there's a solid history. It's quite a rich IP. And you have to honor it. You can't just be like, well, it's Doctor Strange, but I'm cooler. You know, like I'm not. So I kind of, you know, and a lot of us back, you know, in the team and, you know, visual development, what a lot of us would do is like take what was there, honor it, and just make sure that it works beautifully in the screen. Doctor Strange is a great example, because in the comics, it's an illustration, it's a drawing. Yeah. So you have that massive cape that goes over here, and that looks cool in a drawing. But in a film, if you do that, it looks off. It looks crazy.
The guy can't see to the side. Like what the hell?
Like, for example, have you ever seen like Warhammer cosplay?
Yes.
Like when they do it on the actual size with the tiny little head, it's cool. Yeah. But after a while,
then they move.
Yeah, and then they move, and you're like, ah! and it's cool. But like after a while, you're
no function at all.
But in a movie, it's like it you have to kind of get what's in there. You know, make it really cool for the screen, make it proportionate to the actor. make things that are functional. Like, for example, originally with the Doctor Strange concept, I had this like cool anime kind of like cloth around that would just like look really cool while he moved, but that would rub against the actor's hand and that was safe. So they were like, no, change that. And we worked on other prosthetics instead. So yeah, I think it's just about like, making sure you honor that and find ways to get the silhouettes working and the main statements working while making it functional and cool for the screen.
I like that.
I don't want to take over, but
all the way back to the eraser again. Artist over here.
Yeah.
I'm just reminded of like Gusteau from like Ratatouille, where it's like not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. This is kind of how I feel about it too. Like because you say like anything can interest you, and I feel like anything has that potential, but not everything does for me.
Yeah.
So like I think like a computer is interesting. If I can take the time to study a computer, like not figuring out how they work, but just like how they fit together, then I'm interested. Then I'll draw 100 computers because then I with it, Same with like a motorcycle. I'm trying to like learn how motorcycles work, and it's like you could either just do like an analytical drawing and like, oh, okay, the exhaust goes there and blah blah blah, or you can figure out like what does this thing do and what does this thing do, because once you know those things, you can start fitting them together in different ways.
That's beautiful.
Like that's fascinating to me. But I love so we would have gone probably quite different ways with the eraser.
But that's why we should be on the same team.
Hell yeah!
Because like,
boom,
hey clients, please hire Evan and I in the same team. We would give you so many great things.
We would
Great erasers.
With great art.
Well said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We would art you to death.
Yeah, well, that's also interesting that as an artist, you're able to look at things and it's kind of how we learn as a kid. Like some kids, I, for example, had this. I love taking things apart, learning how they work. And when you understand how they work and what thing is responsible for what, then you can really like play with it and put it together. I remember like, taking apart a couple of things and try to piece them together and see if it will work. And that's kind of the fun part of it and kind of the craftsmanship. And then you're like surprised, oh, these things actually kind of work together. Or you try to put something there and like, shit, this does not work. It's like, what is this? But like pulling also inspiration from this is just amazing. Motorcycles are cool. Like
Motorcycles
you should
are dope.
totally get into it. Yeah.
And like printers or whatever.
Yeah.
Like just anything. Anything can be cool, but it just needs
Printers?
contextualization. Yeah, printers can be dope as shit. Have you ever seen the inside of a printer? Actually, never mind.
I cannot
printers.
set up a printer.
Printers go back and forth.
That's my problem.
Setting them up is a different thing.
Yeah, I'm not talking about actually making them work. I'm talking about making it seem like they work.
Yeah.
That's what I care about.
Okay.
Have you ever seen an MRI machine without like the coverlet on? It's literally a giant magnet that's spinning around you at like 100 rotations a goddamn. It's so terrifying.
Yeah.
So like it's a very good reason why they have that coverlet on. Otherwise we would all be like, ah!
You see, I would be like, put me in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I want a
like
cool
spinning.
magnet around me.
this is like cool. I'm like in an anime.
Yeah, it's like sci-fi, right?
Exactly. Tetsuo.
Yeah, right. I'll just get in there and scream,
You both come from different places in the world, right?
Truth.
You're Puerto Rico, Norway. Do you draw inspiration from where you're from? Did that shape you in any way?
I mean, obviously, in a way, but I mean, hard to say. Like, I don't know what the alternative would be.
Yeah. Does it reflect? Do you feel like it reflects in your art?
I don't know. That would have to be an answer for other people, or the question for other people to
someone
answer.
else,
But
yeah.
I guess so. Like obviously, my first love is like Viking stuffs and like the mountains and the trolls and the whatnots. And
You took the bait.
it is a lot of what I draw. But I do feel like I have an equal. Like for example, that goes more into like my love for mythology and history and those kinds of things. And I do find that like the more I read about them, the less I care about the stuff that I found interesting as a kid. The more I care about like the things that are under those things. So like I read a lot about Vikings as a kid, for example. And because archaeology is a moving field, a lot of that stuff was wrong, which is annoying. But also like suddenly you start figuring out that like Vikings are just one layer of a social hierarchy that was built, over hundreds and hundreds of years. And suddenly you start realizing that not everyone in the Nordics at that time were Vikings. There were other people. They were there from different times. Like if you look at Nordic mythology, for example, right? The gods, the Aesir, and then the Vanir. So there's two sorts of gods.
Yeah.
And the Vanir, like Freya and Frey and those guys, they're hostages.
Yeah, fun.
So suddenly we're like, oh, okay, but they're equal gods, but they're hostages.
Oh.
So how did that happen? And it's like there was a war ahead of time. So who were the people who belonged to the other gods? Suddenly you can start answering questions like that. It turns out there are different echelons of society. Like that stuff I get into. So that is in Norway, but it's also not the stuff I grew up with. So I don't know if that's an answer to the question, but it is an answer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a good answer.
I think I kind of fall somewhere similar as well to you, Evan, because like there are things and certain themes that I think are like, you know, I kind of tend to gravitate more toward in certain types of stories because I grew up in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth of the United States. Feels more like a colony if we're being honest. And there's a kind of an interesting thing growing up in a place that has that. You know, where you're just like, we're kind of not, you know, getting everything that other places can get. So like, you know, stories of heroes that fight, you know, to improve their land. Stories of like people coming together and making a better place from the little that they have. Things like that I'm always really interested in. But then also there's a certain kind of mythologies that, you know, are present in Puerto Rico. Our own Native American Indians there, the Taínos, they had so many cool legends. And they would see like the island and different gods, like our big mountain and, you know, Yukiyu was El Yunque. And like, so I got into those when I was a kid, and then also into like Spaniard, because Puerto Rico is a mixture of like Spanish, African, Indian, Taino. And so a lot of those themes, so I grew up with a really, really dark, grim stories and really dark, I remember having the Spanish book of just like super dark, you know, just like fairy tales. The one where it's like Little Mermaid doesn't like live happily ever after. She dies and becomes sea foam. You know,
like even Pinocchio in the Spanish ways, like
Snow White, like she puts like an iron shoe onto her like godmother, like
and her sisters cut off their heels. And shit.
Like, I was like grim. 5, and I'm like, oh. So like. But there's like, you know, there are things about growing up in Puerto Rico that I like are undoubtedly a part of me. Yeah. But because my interest is so all over the place, again, I love history. I love, world legends. We grew up with American media as well. Yeah. So there's certain things that I'm just more Americanized by.
Interesting mixture there.
Yeah, so I'm just like this weird mixture where I'm like, I don't know where exactly... you know, my work might work, you know, kind of work on that. Maybe colors. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Yeah. Well. The off-slang question. I'm just curious because, like, first and foremost, it might sound like a joke, but I kind of get what you mean about feeling like your country has been a colonial possession because we were. Yeah. We were owned by Sweden and Denmark.
Yeah.
At certain time. Yeah. Suffering together. But also, like, you know, both of those countries have imperial past, so they have like a level of culture that we've only like recently attained, and we don't have that like in. Yeah. So. It's like we don't notice but like then they mention it. Like Sweden, for example, had this thing called fika, which is like it's like sort of lunch with coffee and cakes and stuff. And to Norwegians, we'd be like, "What is this decadence?"
Afternoon tea almost.
No, this is like lunch is 2 pieces of bread, maybe cheese if you're being nasty, and a cup of coffee, and then we're back to work. And the Swedes are like, "What? Not 4 hours of cake and coffee? What are you uncivilized bastards?"
But I mean, to be fair, if we look at history, that is a part of, you know, what a colony is. A certain 100%. Erasure of that, you know, culture, right? And so that kind of like difficult to answer, like, what is my cultural identity? Like, I know, like, for example, we've visited like places in Europe that have their own culture for like thousands of years, like places in Asia that have had, you know, and so on. And you're just like, oh, it's very defined. And when I go to Puerto Rico, it's not that it's not there, but it almost feels like there's a past that is missing because there is. So yeah.
But that was the other question I wanted to ask. Like, I don't know how much of a sort of pan South American movement there might have been, but was there like national romanticism for you guys? Because that's a lot of what it is to be like Norwegian. Is like, you know, there's our sort of canon of fairy tales, and it's our canon of like nationalistic like, and I know that's a lot in Poland as well. And so I'm curious, like, is there a corollary to that? Like, do you have sort of some people like 100 years ago like, this is what it's going to be the thing, you know, and now being the thing is following what they did?
I'm not sure if I got that question super well. Do you
So
mean
like-
like
so
like
we-
certain tropes, or do you mean like
more
certain...
like an attempt to codify an idea of a nationhood. So like
Yes, yes, yes.
Identity
Okay.
or something like
For
that.
Yeah,
us,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
Like
you know, it's like
identity?
Yeah.
Slavic
Identity.
mythology,
Yeah.
legends, like all this stuff that kind of like
Yes,
is there,
yes.
right?
I mean, yeah, there are parts, and you know, I did leave Puerto Rico when I was 18.
Right.
So there's a part of me that's a little bit more distanced than I wish I were.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a part of Puerto Rico that is like a very independent spirit. There's a movement right now that's really interesting. It's been going on for quite a couple of years, where it starts with the land, and the farmers are trying to kind of retake the land and make crops that worked for Puerto Rico, that were a part of our, you know, Puerto Rican identity for so long, that instead were, you know, and it's similar to like Hawaii, where it's like now everything's sugar, but they had a variety of crops that would serve as the entire island, you know, before sugar barons came in and pushed them to push sugar. So like there is a certain kind of, you know, in my opinion, kind of like that identity is resurfacing from the land, and oddly enough from the cuisine as well. So like that desire for is like, no, Puerto Ricans should have access to really wonderful produce, to really wonderful food, because most of it is shipped from the United States. We're not allowed to trade with anywhere else in the world. So that kind of like pride is going in restaurants that are opening up, that they have their own farm, and they make the Puerto Rican staples off the produce that they build right there.
Yeah, that's
and
incredible.
that's when it's like, that's when you're seeing, oh, like, oh, this is really cool. And I think that question that you answered, like, what is the direct, you know, I think that's being shaped right now.
Yeah, I think your
And-
answer there was better than anything I could have expected.
Oh, no.
Because like the sort of underpinning of the question is like, you know, 100 years ago we had these guys called like Asbjørnsen and Mo,
Yeah.
and we had like Kittles, and we have all these like guys who used art to sort of codify, like they gathered up all our folklore, they created like written languages for us, so that we had like, these are all the hallmarks of being
Yeah.
a nation, you know?
Yeah.
And then now we're sitting there looking at like, I guess, you know, I like Kittelson, he's great, but also like it doesn't, his work identifies like what a troll is maybe, but it doesn't
Yeah.
really feel to me what it feels like to be a Norwegian now.
Yeah.
So it's weird, because that was a movement, and we've all taken it for granted culturally. But what you're describing sounds a lot more grassroots, sounds a lot more authentic.
Yeah. I think the thing that I am very proud of, like in Puerto Rico, is that we're very resilient, and we have a lot of like, you know, things that, you know, kind of barriers that most folks in developed nations might not have. And I think that kind of develops a certain kind of resiliency, where it's just like, you know what? No, I don't care. I don't care if I don't have access to this. I don't care if I don't have access to that. I don't care if the government says no. I don't care. I'm going to do it. And we're going to try, and we're going to work on it as hard as we can. And we're just going to keep at it. And I think that is a very integral thing about being Puerto Rican, if I were to answer. Yeah.
Nice.
That's an excellent answer.
You're an excellent
Nice.
answer.
The fun part.
Evan took over. He's like the host now. He's asking
Sorry,
the questions.
guys.
That's very good. That's
I think Sebastian,
Thank you, Evan.
we can just leave, right?
You can see yourself out.
We'll be here for the rest of the afternoon.
we got it from here.
By the way, I've seen a meme recently that with Captain America, and it's like that moment when you realize that actually Captain America is not Captain America, it's the Captain Puerto Rico. The one-star guy.
I told Ryan Meinerding that, and he's the guy who designed the Captain America for like the movie.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's Captain Puerto Rico." He didn't know.
He is, and you
He's
cannot
just like-
unsee it.
Yeah.
Right?
He's just like, Karla, you know, that's not the end. It was like,
Puerto Ricans were that blonde and blue-eyed. That's news.
no, we are.
Oh, really?
We can be, yeah.
Ah, thanks.
That's the thing about,
All right, there you
but
go.
that's very common in most Latin American, like, in the Latin American region. Like,
Yeah.
in my own family, I have, we're like, we look like everything. We're every spectrum. Like, I have, like, aunties and uncles that their skin is very, like, heavy melanin. I have, like, somewhere in the middle, I have blonde and blue-eyed cousins. Yeah,
But is
it's,
that a result of like immigration, or is it like something that like
that's
has
just,
been there?
That's just a result of how, like, Puerto Rico just happened. Because remember, we had, the Spaniards came in,
Right.
and then a bunch of like different European countries came in, and of course there was slavery.
Right, of course,
But we did abolish slavery 100 years before the United States, or so I remember correctly. And then we also have our indigenous tribes in there.
Right.
So like it's a big mix.
It's a lovely smorgasbord.
It is a smorgasbord. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking because there's native African tribes, for example, and up like in Kazakhstan, for example, there are tribes that are blue-eyed and blonde, even though there's no connection to anything like Caucasian or European. So when you mentioned, I was like, oh, maybe there's like a genetic subpool there as well. But
It's literally just like a shaker.
In
Lovely.
Haiti, for example, it happens that there was so many Polish people, let's say, that helped them to actually, deal with this regime. That they still have, Haitians with Polish surnames. So we also have been, Poland has also struggled, right? As you probably know, like 100 years.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but the Poles that ended up in Haiti were of the army that the French sent to subdue, and then they just,
Exactly.
and then they were like,
Yeah.
"You Napoleon."
Exactly. yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Badass.
Yeah, rough. True rebels.
And I mean, we'd be if we're talking about like national romanticism and nation building, like we're in Poland. It is it is a country whose ability to say like we are the thing that we are is kind of goddamn legendary.
Also, a country that was not a country in history. Like we were disassembled by other countries.
Yeah,
and we
there
were
was no Poland
non-existent.
at some point, and there
But
was only the underground Poland.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
because there is that argument that there was never not a Poland, because no matter how they erased the border, the sort of cultural and ethnicity never moved. Like it never got, never was overtaken.
Yeah, we fight it back.
It stayed, which is incredible. Yeah, the resilience of Poles is incredible.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. So we share the resilience.
Yeah.
Stubborn sons of
want-
bitches, y'all.
Yeah.
And then when you get angry, you put on wings and like.
And be Husaria.
Thank you.
Hey.
Evan, you are also.
I didn't want to say anything. Didn't want to make it weird.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, next question.
Incredible.
Yeah, let's go.
I don't even know where to go right now. To be honest,
we
like
can-
it's
many places. Actually, I had one question because regarding being picky, for sure you have some good memories and bad memories with clients that you work on, art directors or whatever, right? Your like best memory and why, right? Like working on the production, on any production.
It's hard.
I think my best sort of experience so far is the project I'm on now.
Oh, right.
Not just because like they came to me.
You mean
and-
the Artifacts Monday, right?
Yeah.
There's some false hero also promised
yeah,
one from them.
yeah.
And because they came into the project with such like a personal idea of the game they wanted to make for themselves, and then they had a very honest like turn moment when they were like, oh crap, we want it to look differently. And then since then the whole project has just been them essentially taking, I mean, they've been taking sort of point on how they want to world build, and then they sort of keep coming back to sort of, okay, so how do we make this thing that we now want? And instead of like insisting on anything, they're just like, they've been very sort of consistent on making a little bracketed box of rules and things, and then they want to like put it in there, and it's sort of this
awesome.
lovely
That's
project.
really
So I
cool.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a hard question for me. Because I've been very lucky, and I've been very honored to have a lot of really great experiences. I can say two because I can't just pick one. I really enjoyed working on Black Panther. That movie was so fun to work with and to work on. And because just like the crew was right, the way that like the art team was kind of vibing off each other was fantastic. And just like the project in itself was really, really just like from top down, like it was just attention to the detail, attention to the history, attention to the cultures.
Oh yeah.
And it just felt like we were working on something that was going to be massive. And it was really, really exciting and really like satisfying to see when it came out. The reception it got, it was fantastic.
The visuals were amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The entire team, underneath Ryan Coogler were just doing incredible work. But if, that's like my second, but like my first, it just still has to be Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
The number one, it was my first project when I was working with Marvel Studios, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And the way that Marvel Studios works is like you'll have a bunch of different concept artists working on one character in the beginning, throwing as many ideas as possible to see whose vision kind of sticks and speaks for either to the director or to the movie as a whole. And, each production kind of cycles. Like some people, like for Black Panther's Anthony Francisco, his work on the Dora Milaje, like completely changed everything. But that was me and Doctor Strange, the first one, because, once we kind of got that robed look, then that inspired, the sea lots. Then that kind of started kind of working around and seeping its way through the entire movie. And it was just wild. It was wild. Like from its inception, like, when I started we didn't have a cast.
Yeah.
It was originally going to be, they were talking early on with Joaquin Phoenix. That didn't quite happen. But then they were like, all right, do a painting of an actor that sort of looks like the actor, but not really, because we're going to go shop around. And I thought of 2 people that I thought would be great. Pedro Pascal and then Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
And then like, I did concepts that kind of looked like them, but wasn't really. Just like be like, this could be you. And then 2 weeks after, it was Cumberbatch, and I'm like, did I summon him? I don't think I did, but like it was
But
still
he fits
it was
perfect.
it was really
yeah,
he did a really
yeah.
good. He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's like, and he's just a top-notch actor.
Yeah,
And but then afterwards, getting my concept, getting to work on every aspect of his costume, and the designers, like everybody kind of working together to make sure that costume looked good, and then going around and seeing it in the big screen, and then also seeing it in like big advertisement, like this my boy. Oh, that was a very unique experience.
Design that.
Like from doing all that to being to the premiere and being like, oh, it was
must
quite
be amazing.
It was quite an opportunity. So yeah. But there's so many more stories. I feel like I've been very lucky.
Yeah. You mentioned that you worked on the Warcraft movie.
Yeah, briefly.
I got hired at Blizzard because of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they apparently like the work had been done before I got hired, but they were like, we need someone who can talk about armor. And so they hired me, and I never got to do any armor.
Wait, were we coworkers in there too?
I don't no, because cinematics didn't work. Like cinematics didn't work online. I think Laura Austin worked on something for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I got to work
remember.
with her. So we're connected via Laura.
Oh
I
my
guess.
goodness, amazing.
It all
you
comes
work
together
together,
once
okay.
again.
Yeah,
So workers again.
All coworkers
Oh man, we're coming a long way.
in the trenches, fighting the same battles.
You know what's the best thing? It's so easy to talk to you, like both of you. Like I feel like it's like we don't even need questions. We can just
It's just
like
running,
yeah, we can just like talk.
infinite fuel.
Yeah,
I know.
it's
Yeah.
incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. But we need to like put a pin in it because like
No.
we
No.
We're
unfortunately.
gonna continue in a couple of hours.
Extended
With beers.
version.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do we end it? Like, do we have like a last thing that we kind of maybe?
Flipping the table, or
No, flipping the table would be the best. Would be
they
be
would
the
kill
best.
us. They would kill us.
You would
Just start on bobbing and weaving.
Yeah.
You're massive, but I'm scrapping.
It's like first blood, fine.
Since we're at Promised Land and it's all about being united in art, like how do you see this united in art, and how would you pass it on to others?
I have a very quick answer for that, which I see it sort of like Norwegian friendships. We're alone together. No two artistic journeys are the same, but we all follow relatively the same principles,
lovely.
sort of
Cool.
ins and
Wow.
outs of it. So I
beautiful.
think the magical
Yeah.
thing about a place,
I'm
like,
gonna tattoo
especially,
Yeah.
but like the thing I love about Promised Land, and I would say your spiritual ancestor might be sort of something like IFCC, which is that it's very non-pretentious. It doesn't set artificial barriers, and it's very much about like having everybody talk to everybody.
Oh, thank you so much, because
And
this is it.
it's one of the things that I love about coming here is that you've sort of fostered that kind of a community, or not community, but like that kind of community rule here.
Yeah, yeah.
So that it seems, especially among younger artists who come here who might in other contexts be quite nervous about sharing their stuff, it's sort of they're constantly being encouraged to like, okay, we all feel you.
Yeah.
Step to the side of that and just like get that portfolio out. And it might seem like boldness, but I truly love that because it's what's gonna make them sort of blossom.
Awesome.
And so it goes to that thing of like artists, when we sort of have a community, it's not really about paying back, it's about paying forward. So it's that thing of like, you got help, you got lifted, so lift somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
awesome. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Damn, man, I don't know if I can like.
We out!
I'm just like, quick. No, I mean it's perfect. Alone together is perfect. Like, because I've spoken about that, you know, where it's like so many people think that like all the artistic struggles that they face are unique to them.
Yeah.
Not because they're, you know, and they personalize it in a way where it's like, oh, it's not because this is a hard puzzle and I can't solve it, but rather there's something wrong with me. I'm a failure of a human, or all these things that they tell each other to say, like, why them, you know, not being able to paint a face or something means that they're a failure. But that's not the case. And absolutely, as Evan said, like, it's not something that you face, you know, you're not alone in that. Each and every single one of us has experienced that at one point or another and continue to experience it throughout our whole career. So to be able to share that with people and be like, look, each and every single one's per journey is very unique, very different, but you're not alone in this. And whatever thing that you're feeling like you are, like, believe me, go into a room of other artists, you'll quickly find out otherwise.
You'll be like, they're all weirdos.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And I know that one. And also, this is my first time at Promised Land, so I'm excited to continue to
On
experience
behalf
it.
of all of us, welcome.
Yes.
you.
No, we're excited to have you. Like
Awesome.
the
Thank you
experience
so
you
much
have
for-
is
for
just
being here.
incredible. Yeah.
You guys are wonderful, but
Awesome.
basically what
pleasure.
Evan said.
All right. Thank you for
Awesome.
the chat. It
Thank
was
you.
Great.
It was very mindful and demure.
Demure.
We didn't show a lot of chocho. We only showed a lot of chichi. That is a Puerto Rican
was
queen.
gonna
I
say,
know it.
I'm gonna nod and smile and pretend to be cultured, the Norwegian way.
Thank you
No,
both.
thank you all for having us. It
Thank
was
you
an
so much.
absolute
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for watching, and we hope that you did enjoy this episode as much as we did.
It was an amazing one. And as always, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let us know what you're thinking about the episodes. And as always, let's stay in touch, and we'll see you in the next one.